Isle of Islay has a long tradition in making Scotland's most famous material. Tweed has kept us warm and sheltered us from the elements for hundreds of years. Even today, it has its place as a working cloth amongst those people who live and breathe the rural way of life. But the story starts long before the Tweed mill. In the spring of the year, with the help of gamekeepers and stalkers, the shepherds take their sheep off the lands to be shorn. It is this yearly harvest of wool which forms the building material for Tweed.
And this machine, I built it myself from scratch. When we came here in '81, there were two machines, but they were not in a good state of repair. So I went to Yorkshire and bought myself two second-hand machines, knocked all four into bits, and built myself two out of four. So that's where it started. Now that beam that we're preparing upstairs, we drop down through, and this is what it is in here. So what we would do is we'd put the new beam into here, and we'd tie each individual thread of the old to the new. So we'd have 2,000 knots all the way across. We'd draw the knots through the shafts, and that's a way of rethreading it without actually having to do everyone at a time. That loom there is a gamekeeper tweed for a shooting estate, for the gamekeepers to wear, so that's what that is. So I believe there are records of a linen mill, or a linen business here on Islay in 1550, 1600. Then in 1883 they built this new mill. It was in the same Christie family for 3 generations. And then about 1970 Willie Christie decided he was going to retire. So he just gradually over the years did less and less and less and less. And in 1981 I think it was virtually stopped to standstill. 3 guys who knew Willie and knew about the mill approached me in 1981 and asked me if I'd be prepared to come and get the place going again. So I came up here in '81, restored all the machinery, got it all going again, replaced some of it where it needed replacing, and we started weaving in 1982. That was the start, and then David Boyd, who was factor for Lord Margadale's estate, gave us our first order, which was for gamekeeper tweeds, for the shooting gamekeepers to estate. So we then did Lord Margadale, we did Lord Astor, Lord Besty, all of estates around the island. And it just gradually snowballed and built up from there over the last 36 years. We now supply tweeds to tailors in Savile Row, we supply tailors in Italy, Germany, Sweden. We do film work, we've worked on, I think, about 14 different movies. I know the first one was December Bride, about Ireland in the 19th century. Then we did Hemingway with Stacey Keach, about the life of Ernest Hemingway. Then we did Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise's film Far and Away. And then it gets a bit vague from then on. We did Forrest Gump, Amazing Grace, Chaplin, December Bride, War Horse, Jack the Giant Slayer. And the last film I worked on was Big Friendly Giant. This is the first step when the yarn arrives from the spinner. So the yarn comes up from the spinner, whether it's in Yorkshire or Scotland, wherever it comes from, and it will be the appropriate weights that have already been worked out, how many kilos of each colour we need. Then we'll set the pattern up on this creel, So you can see this is 2 of white, 2 of black, 2 of white, 2 of black. It's just a simple Prince of Wales check. So that's all set up on there, then the threads are taken off there, through here, we wind them onto here. So this particular piece of cloth has got 2,000 threads wide, and we're doing 40 yards. So if you imagine we put 100 threads on, 100 threads, 100 threads, do that 20 times, that will give me 2,000 threads wide, 40 yards all prepared on there. And then the next step would be to take that off there, wind it off there, and put it onto these beams here. And these are now ready to go down through the hole in the floor down to be woven. When I came to Scotland in 1981, there would have been about a couple of hundred textile companies. Now there's, what, 14, 15? So it's decimated. It's really, there's 3 or 4 big companies like Lochcarron of Scotland, McNaughton's of Pitlochry, Johnson's of Elgin, and then there's 2 or 3 smaller firms still operating. But I believe there's a spinning company up in Peterhead. But apart from that, it's gone. Take up, that means that this roller has to go to wind the cloth on as it's being woven. So that's take up. Shedding, picking, that's firing the shuttle from left to right, right to left as the shuttle flies across. Now if you watch these shafts, these will change. See? And as they change, that's working the interrelation of each particular thread. So this is what's working on a 2 and 2 twill. So if you look at the cloth, you see a line going from left to right, and that's how that works. And the thread at the left, the bobbins at the left would have to be let off at the same rate. So that's more or less how it all works. I reckon the hunting, shooting, fishing business is probably 25% of our turnover. It'll be that kind of business. Shooting estates, making for people who go hunting and shooting, people who want to look as though they go hunting and shooting, that kind of thing.
Our tweed we have is very, very distinct. I'm quite proud to wear the tweed I have. It separates you from different estates, and it's good. It's been worn. This own tweed has been worn in this estate for generations and generations by the owner's family. It's sort of heritage. It's been passed down, and it's nice to. It's kind of a privilege to wear it almost. Certain estates you aim to work on, and it's great to be a part of it. It's just almost like a badge. It's their uniform, and that's what you get. It's good.
The biggest job I've ever undertaken, and that was the film Braveheart. And the brief was to design a tartan or a tweed that looks as though it was 12th, 13th century hand woven. So this is with the help of Charles Noah, the costume designer, this is what I came up with. This one here, I'll bring it round, is a commission I've just finished doing for an American company, and they want a tartan that reflects the colours of the Antarctica. So that's what we've done. 30 estates on our accounts. Some of them only come online every 5 or 6 years. Some of them come every, like Lord Dalhousie's estate is more or less a regular every 12-month order. Then we've got Raleigh estate, Lord Astor's estate, we're in Talon estate.
I suppose the tweed supply is full circle, as in the tweed we've started from sheep wool on these hills to then going into a factory or a mill house to be milled into tweed, to then into a tailor's yard to be made into a suit, to then coming back onto the hill to be used to made for stocking. So it's quite cool to think it's full circle. Tweed's very traditional. A lot of people associate it with sort of the people that pay to come stocking here, but it's a tweed's a sort of working man's cloth, I suppose. Every estate has a different pattern work, different checker work. It makes it very individual to each estate. Just been worn traditionally by gamekeepers and stockers for generations, years and years. And it's a great material. It's completely silent when crawling. It isn't waterproof, but it is very, very warm, even if it does get wet. So it's a good material.
We sell to tailors who make +4s, breeches and this kind of thing. We sell to hat manufacturers who make deerstalker hats and flat caps and bonnets and stuff like that. And that's the basic. That's our basic business, the hunting, shooting, fishing brigade.
We speak to the mills daily. If you're making a suit, you need fabric. So if an estate comes in, they'll often bring their own estate tweed, and we stock a lot of estates tweed here on their behalf. If an individual comes in, they can choose from any of the tweeds on our racks or any of the tweeds on the bunches on the wall just out there, and they can choose from over 100 tweeds to make their bespoke suit from. As you've seen today here at Campbell's, I think the special thing that we really do, and our DNA, our USB, is we make it here. Upstairs we've got 2 tailors and 6 seamstresses, a jacket room and a trouser room, and there's 4 people in each, and we make our product here. And that's a bit of a headache to maintain at times, because it's a real skill. It takes people a long time to train up to do it. So, maintaining our workforce is difficult, but we're really passionate about maintaining that. And I think along with Blackhall's in Highland, we're one of the very few in Scotland to be maintaining that craft. So we don't just send our tweeds away, we make them here. And how do we make them here? Well, it's quite a long, time-consuming process. You start with tweed, you get your pattern, you have to mark the pattern up based on the measures that you've taken off the individuals. So because our process is bespoke, the gentleman will come in here and we will measure them both for jackets and both for +4s. And for example, for a pair of +4s, it's waist, it's seat, it's the length, it's the drop, it's the thigh, it's the garter. All these things have to be measured for a bespoke pair of +4s. And then when the tailor has the tweed in their hands and they're marking out the pattern, they apply those measures to what they're chalking out. Once you've marked or chalked out, you cut out the pattern with the big shears, as you'll have seen today. The lining also, depending on all the details that the customers asked for. The bundle then gets put together and it heads upstairs to either the jacket room or the trouser room. And then it's the makeup process, which is part hand, part machine, depending on what part of the jacket or trouser you're making. And then you have to baste up. So as you can see to my right, there are jackets in base format, and that is what you make them as before you fit them. And you make a jacket in a base format, you fit it, and then it goes back upstairs. We work with probably over 100 estates now. Estates are really important to our business. They probably make up 60 to 70% of the workflow that goes through the tailoring department. But also, if you consider the retail business, which is a significant part of Campbell's, the guests who visit the estates and come to the shop would be a very important revenue stream for the retail business. The paying guests, for example, who are coming shooting, who are coming fishing, they might have a little flutter in the shop, and that's very helpful to Campbell's development.
So it's quite a big thing. You go once a year, usually so early springtime, well before the season starts, so there's enough time for it to be made. You go and a tailor comes either to you or you go to him and measure. It's all made to measure tweed. And he comes, measures up, and then I suppose we'd make templates, and off the back of that would then pin it together, and then you're fitted again with the tweed to make sure any final adjustments, and it's made, and it all comes nicely packaged in a box. And it's quite nice. It's like sort of Christmas, opening your tweeds all nice and clean and new, getting them on for the first day of the season.
So with 60 to 70% of the tailoring business being linked with the estates, so the gamekeeping teams, if you took that away from Campbell's, you're only leaving ourselves with 30 to 40% of the business. So that would be a huge problem for our tailoring business. It'd be very difficult for me to go and replace that business. 8 people employed upstairs in tailoring, they need to be busy. If our order book goes down, if we're making less, then it calls into the question, do we need as many people? Because naturally, if you're making less, you need less people. So the estates are really important to us, and it's particularly for the girls upstairs, it's always a particular passion of theirs to know where the estate is. We have a map upstairs, and it's nice for them to know where the estate is, and they love it when, particularly if it's a local estate. Of course, they love it if it's a very famous estate, and famous people own it. That's great. But without the estates, well, it would be a really different business, because not only would the tailoring suffer, but so would the shop without the paying guests on the estates who are going fishing or stalking or shooting. So we really are closely and intrinsically linked.
Our estate here, even though it is on the east coast, there's a lot of granite, a lot of grey natural rock around the hill, and our Tweed is obviously grey, so it does fit in quite well around about these scree faces and rocks. If you're maybe a lower ground pheasant keeper, it might be more of a yellowy Tweed, maybe green, and then on the west coast, sort of light grassy green for all that sort of millennia grass that you find on the west coast, sort of just traditional west coast ground. So the Tweed sometimes tends to favour the ground that it's used and worn on.
So in terms of the sport on the estates, if that's growing, usually it means they might have more team members on the estate, gamekeepers, gillies, and that in turn means more Tweeds for us to make, which, if you look at the knock-on effect of that, it means more employment at Campbell's, it means more employment in the local community, and that can only be a good thing for a small tailor shop trying to carve our own niche in a remote part of the northwest of Scotland.
For gamekeepers and stalkers, it's much more than just a fashion. It is a working bit of gear. It's working cloth, and it's tough. It's hardy wearing. Although it is very fashionable and it does look very smart, it's there for a purpose, and it suits the purpose very, very well.